I am now joined again by President and CEO of Walmart U.S., John Furner. John, hopefully we're not having any technical difficulties. You're the biggest employer in the country. What are your associates telling you they're most concerned about?
Well, Stephanie, our team, as you know, have just done an amazing job the last couple of months taking care of customers with essential services, and we've been open. We've been open for the last couple of months, and we've taken a number of measures to change the way we operate, everything from metering in the store to limiting the hours the stores are open. And what our people are saying, and I think you'll hear this from businesses all over, is that it's going to take all of us. It's going to take employers. It'll take employees doing the things we need to keep people socially distanced and providing the right equipment. But we also need customers to do their part. You know, I'm a customer when I go out, and it can be inconvenient to stay in a line or stay spaced out as you enter a store. But those are important things to make sure that everyone is in the best possible position we can be in so that our employees and our customers stay safe as we move to the next phases of this recovery in the pandemic.
Is customer behavior surrounding this pandemic different in different places in the country?
I think it is. And I think it has a lot to do, Stephanie, with the experience that people have had in markets. You know, there are markets that have been heavily affected by the pandemic and families that have been affected. And there are other parts in the country that have had far fewer cases. And I think it depends on the experience that you've had somewhere near you. And in some parts of the country, there have been stay-at-home orders that still exist. In other areas, there have been states that didn't have stay-at-home orders. So I think it has a lot to do with what's happened to you most locally.
As the biggest employer, this pandemic is everywhere. You have had employees get sick, but you've also got the resources and the infrastructure to address all this. If you were a mom and pop, if you were a small business right now looking to reopen, do you think you could take on all these new safety measures?
Well, as a small business or a large business, there are some very practical things that each of us can do. You know, first, we meter people in the stores during the day, and it's as simple as putting an X on the sidewalk with tape, and it's 6 feet apart, and asking people to stand spaced out. We count the number of people come in. We've got a number of people per 1,000 square feet that we have in the stores. Those are easy things to do. We've got directional aisle markers so that customers are moving down the aisles in the same direction and stay distant. So there's just some real practical things you could do. Plexiglass shields that are between our associates who are serving customers is an inexpensive way to make sure that people stay safe. So yeah, I think there are a number of things that any business can do without adding a lot of complexity or cost in the business.
Do you think the retail industry will change forever? We know large parts of the industry were suffering before, but now we're doing curbside pickup. More and more people are doing online shopping. When we go back, are we going back?
Well, I think the customer definitely has changed, certainly in the short term. And there'll be a couple phases to this recovery. So in the next couple months, we'll be reopening with the pandemic still present, and we'll have these protective measures in place. And during those times, I think there'll constantly be visual reminders that things are different, and people are shopping at the curb more, and they are using contact-free checkout. Like in our stores, Walmart Pay, you can use without contact. That behavior's changed. And then we'll move on in a few months, hopefully sooner than later, where there's a vaccine and we get to a full recovery. And there will probably be some kind of new normal that we'll have to learn about once we get there. But these events do tend to change things pretty significantly.
Can you take us into the American consumer? You have been open through this pandemic. Help us understand, what is the consumer buying? What did they need a month ago, today, and where are they going tomorrow?
Well, there have definitely been some big shifts. You know, early on, we saw lifts in things like over-the-counter pharmaceuticals and then our consumable products. Mid-March, it became a really big run on food. Many people saw that our food business was shopped heavily throughout the country. And then over the last couple, 4 to 5 weeks, it shifted from those kind of categories to the things we do when we stay at home. So people have been buying more board games and puzzles, small exercise, things like yoga and small weight equipment have done well. And then as the weather's improved, our bicycle business has changed. And then there's some categories that have been softer, like auto care, and people aren't driving as much as they were. The cars are parked. So we can really see this change in consumer behavior throughout the entire thing right up until this week.
Do you think we're going to be booming again? Do you think demand will be back in a huge way third quarter of this year? You've got a very unique perspective because everyone else's numbers are warped because through no fault of their own, they shut down. You've lived through this.
Well, it'd be hard to forecast what it'll be like the rest of the year. I think there are a lot of moving pieces here. We've got the job market that we'll be watching. Many people are starting to come back to work, and this will affect different segments. Things like food service will ease their way back in. Some other parts of the economy may be more impacted. So this will be something that we'll have to watch closely. But as far as the consumer, I think that there will definitely be some changes. I think people who have learned to use pickup as an option for grocery shopping are enjoying that, and they'll probably stay with channels like that in the future.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.